pick up tonight from the middle of Perek Chaf Aleph. When we last left off, David had finally returned to Yerushalayim. All the rebellions were put away, right? We talked about Sheva ben Bichri. Sheva, that last rebellion was shut down. They sent his head over the wall. And then it says that there was a famine in the land. That was the beginning of our Perek 21. There's a famine in the land, and it was a 3-year famine, a 3-year drought, which was causing a famine. And they tried to figure out what it was about, what was the spiritual source of this. They looked, there was no idolatry, there was no immoral relations. People were giving charity. It was a holy and righteous generation during the days of David. And so what they did was, after all of the soul searching, 3 years of soul searching, they couldn't find the issue. And David consulted with the Urim V'Tumim, with the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol. He asked the question, and the response came that the famine is a result of 2 failures of the Jewish people. Number 1 was that when King Saul died, when Shaul died, they did not give him a proper hesped. They didn't eulogize him properly. Although David did give a eulogy on a national level, that's supposed to be, everybody gets off of work and they spend the day mourning and eulogizing, and nobody did that. There wasn't proper respect for Shaul. That was the first reason. And reason number 2 for the drought was that Shaul had killed, along with the city of Kohanim that he wiped out, he had killed the Givonites. Givonites were those converts who, in the days of Joshua, they made a treaty with the Jewish people. They tricked Joshua. He made a treaty with them, and they converted to Judaism, and they were the water carrier, basically the lower class employees. They had been killed along with the city of Kohanim. And so, because of Shaul's actions, the people are now experiencing this 3-year famine. Now, you may ask why the people are suffering on account of Shaul. In fact, he's not even alive anymore, right? David's now in charge, and everyone's suffering because of the actions of Saul. So some Mefarshim say, interestingly, that in the days of Shaul, the people could not handle this punishment. So Hashem delayed the consequences until the people were ready and in a state where they could actually handle the drought. Once things had settled and David was now in charge, it's very fascinating, Hashem had delayed the punishment. That was one thing. Alternatively, I'm thinking now that it was really 2 reasons why the drought came about, right? The lack of respect for Shaul, in addition to the killing of the Givonites. So if it was just the killing of the Givonites, that alone didn't warrant the punishment. But after Shaul died, and now there was a national failure that nobody mourned him properly, the 2 of those combined now sparked the punishment. Okay. In any event, we saw last time that David, he thinks it's too late to correct the problem of the eulogies, but he approaches the Givonites and he says, what could we do for you to appease you after, it's because we killed your brethren that this drought is happening. So the Givonites said, you killed 7 of ours. We want 7 of Shaul's descendants to be killed. And not only do we want them to be killed, we want them hanging in the city of Shaul, the Givat Shaul. We want them hanging in the very city of the person who offended us. So David does 2 things. We saw, he says, okay, I'll do it. We'll do it. But he also makes a decree then and there that the Givonites, because of this lack of compassion and this lack of ability to get over it, and the viciousness of demanding 7 heads in exchange for their deaths, David decreed that the Givonites cannot marry into the Jewish people. They can never become, for eternity, they can never become a full-fledged member of the Jewish people. Even after conversion, they may not marry a regular Jew. They can marry within each other. Because he saw that they had this deep lacking in their character.
Question.
Yes.
We're talking about the punishment for the Gibeonites that were killed with all the Kohanim, but it sounds tilted, because you not only killed the Gibeonites, but all those other Kohanim.
Good. Excellent. Excellent. So first we did see there were consequences of the killing of the Kohanim for Shaul personally. However, you are right, and I actually heard a lecture. I don't remember who it was, that they said, you see from here actually the compassion of the Jews. The Kohanim, they never had this grudge, even though they were decimated. Their whole city was wiped out. They didn't hold a grudge, so Hashem didn't carry out their case because they didn't come to Hashem with complaints. Okay, we were killed and we suffered, and they regrouped and they continued serving the Jewish people. The Gibeonites, they held on to it. Long after Shaul's death, they were still frustrated with what had happened, and they were waiting to get their revenge. So it's a matter of the survivors. Did they bear a grudge? Did they hold a grudge? That's the difference between the Kohanim and the Gibeonites. And that's why David said this is not proper, and you cannot marry into the Jews now, because you see you have this rotten character. It's interesting. It's a very interesting point. Especially, there's a real discussion if any Gibeonites were actually killed. Could be that just by killing the Kohanim, you just withheld the livelihood. That's even further out. But there you have it. Okay, so David takes 7 descendants of Shaul, and we discussed last time that it was through a divine selection process that 7 of them were chosen, and they were killed, and they were left to hang. And that's where we're going to pick up now. Verse number 9. So it's chapter 21, verse 9, Pasuk Tes. Vaitnem be'ad hagivonim. He gives these 7 people. 2 of them are the sons of Ritzpah Bataya, and the other 5 were the sons of Meirav, and they were adopted by Michal. And he takes these 7, he gives them to the hands of the Gibeonites, and they hang them in the mountain before Hashem. And they all died, 7 on the same day. And they were killed in the beginning of the harvest of the barley. So you're talking about like now, around Nisan time. Vatikach Ritzpah Bataya et Asak. Now one of the mothers, there were 2 mothers of the victims. One of them, Ritzpah Bataya, she was a mother of 2 of the victims who were killed. She took sackcloth, Vatateula el Hatsur, mitchilat katzir ad nitach mayim aleh min hashamayim. And she camped herself out by these hanging bodies. You recall, these bodies were not just left hanging for the day they were killed. They were left hanging for months. What we're going to calculate now is going to be about 7 months until the rain started falling. From the beginning of the harvest, which was now in Nisan, all the way till Cheshvan, which is when the first rain fell. And what this mother did was she camped out by the bodies. And she made sure that no birds would come and desecrate the bodies during the daytime, and no animals would come at night. So she was a watchman, a watch lady, who took care of these 7 bodies for 7 months. There's a beautiful midrash that the Radak brings down. It says that she took a sack, vatateula el hatsur, and she spread it over a rock. And that could just mean that she made like a little tent to protect the bodies from the elements. She spread this thing over a rock so it could cast shade, or she made maybe a bed for herself. It's not exactly clear. But the midrash the Radak brings down, Vatateula el Hatsur, he says, Hatsur tamim pa'alo. We refer to Hashem as the rock in the verse where we accept Hashem's justice upon us. We say Hatsur tamim pa'alo from the Shirat Ha'azinu. We refer to Hashem as the rock whose deeds are righteous. She'tzdika alea tadin. That for those 7 months while she was protecting the bodies from desecration, she was not upset at Hashem. She accepted upon herself the righteousness and the uprightness of the rock, Hashem, whose righteousness is tamim, complete, which is beautiful. So this mother is the mother of the 2 victims. Her herself, although she was sitting there mourning and agonizing day and night, she was not angry at God, just the opposite. She was accepting the justice upon her. That's the Radak. Okay, so now David hears about this lady who is camped out, the mother, Vayugadla David, this is verse number 11, et asher asta Ritzpah bat Aya pilega Shaul. It was told what she had done. It was told to David. So what does he do? He is inspired. Vayelech David. He says, I'm going to now take action myself. He goes and he, what do you call it when you remove, exhume? When you take bones out of the grave? He takes out the bones of Shaul and Yonatan from Yavesh Gilad, and he wants to now rebury them in a more respectful place. You recall Shaul and Yonatan, they died in battle, and um, their bones were taken captive. Their bodies were taken captive, and the residents of Yavesh Gilad, they did an operation to retrieve the bodies, and they had buried them there in their city. And as we saw earlier, that they weren't properly mourned. David now, when he sees the honor that Ritzpah Bataya was giving to these deceased people, he says, maybe it's not too late to correct our wrong of not giving Saul the proper honor. So what he does is he goes and he retrieves their bodies from the place that they were buried, and he wants to reinter them and bury them in the land of Binyamin, Betsela Bekever Kish Aviv, amongst the cemetery, the familial plot where Shaul's father is buried. So he goes and he gathers their bones. And then it says, Vayasu kol asher tziva hamelech vayater Elohim la'aretz achreichen. And the people did everything that the king commanded. So number one, what they did was they gathered the bones of Shaul and Jonathan, but the Gemara and their Mefarshim say what the king commanded was that everywhere the bones were carried, as they were transporting them to their new resting place, everybody was saying eulogies, meaning they would stop. They've come to this community in the middle of Jerusalem. The shul would stop, and everybody, the community would stop, and everybody would eulogize and talk about the greatness of Saul and Jonathan, and so on. They go to the next city, and everybody would talk about and eulogize the greatness of Saul and Jonathan. Now, the Gemara says typically it is not appropriate to give eulogies after 12 months have passed since a person died. We don't mourn excessively. We believe in the afterlife, obviously, right? There's a world, this world is just preparation for the next one. And if a person mourns excessively, it's an indicator that he thinks like this is it, this is the final thing, and there's nothing in the world to come, and that's why I'm so distraught. So after 12 months, it's too much. And here, David, we found, commanded that everybody should be eulogizing Jonathan and Saul, even after 12 months. So how could that be? So one explanation is, since they are now being reinterred, they're going to be buried a second time. So there's a little bit of a cause for, it's like a refreshing of the mourning. It's more acute now that you're actually seeing them out of the grave and being about to put back. That's one reason. Additionally, it wasn't in isolation that they were being eulogized. It was in the context of the eulogies of the other 7 individuals that had died. So since you're already giving a hesped, eulogizing and mourning over the 7 people who were killed, you can also add into that eulogies for Shaul and Jonathan. And that's how David got around this issue of eulogizing after 12 months. That's the technical thing that's going on over here. Okay, so that is the end of that episode. And it says that after this, Hashem Yater, he responded to the land, meaning it started raining again, and the crops started growing again, and the famine was over. That's the end of verse number 14.
So when David removed the bones of Jonathan and Saul and eventually moved them to the burial, the 7 people that were killed and were still hanging.
Oh no, good. So I skipped over a verse, pardon me.
It's in verse 13.
Yeah. In verse number 13, it says that they gather the bones of Jonathan and Shaul, and they gather the bones of the ones who were hanged. Meaning, at once it started raining again, after 7 months of their hanging, he now gathered the bodies, and as he was going to bury them, he also buried Shaul and Jonathan. Thank you. That was an important point. Thank you very much. And therefore, now they're being laid to rest. And so he says, we can also upgrade the resting place of Jonathan and Shaul, which he did. And while we're mourning these 7, we're also going to mourn and eulogize Jonathan and Shaul. Yeah, so that's how it went. And I guess he knew that this. What made him suddenly decide to take them down? If they were hanging for 7 months, once it started raining, he saw that it was like a sign from Hashem that, okay, like mercy is the time of mercy has come. Oh, the Gemara says fascinatingly, a Rashi brings, in fact, um, doesn't it say that you should not leave a corpse hanging past past the day? So how could David allow these corpses to hang for 7 months? So Rashi quotes the Gemara, which says, "It is better that one letter of the Torah be uprooted in order to sanctify Hashem's name in public." Meaning, we are going to override that law of not letting the bodies hang in order to create a Kiddush Hashem, a sanctification of Hashem's name. Because people are going to pass by now for the next several months, and they'll say, "Hey, who are these people hanging?" Let's say these are the sons of King Shaul, royal family, and they have been killed and hanged because of their mistreatment of the Givonites. Who are the Givonites? The lowest class people, the water carriers and the converts who came into the nation through a ruse and deserve very, very little respect. And that's how the lowest people are treated. You hang royal family members and you leave them hanging and let their bodies be so degraded because of the mistreatment of converts. This was such a sanctification of Hashem's name. It says that 150,000 people decided to convert during those 7 months because they were so inspired by the treatment of the Jewish people towards the underdog and towards the loyal people. A fascinating side point. Yeah. Okay. Now the end of the chapter is going to recount 4 more wars that took place in the days of David. And it's not clear. There's a discussion about when these took place. Some of them might have happened here at this point. It's going to be clear that at least one of them happened before David ever became king. The only thing that's uniting these 4 wars is that they all have to do with a giant that was struck down. 4 different giants, gigantic people, were struck down, possibly even from the same mother, depending on the midrash. So these 4 wars are all recounted together here at this point. So we're going to go through them. Here we go. It says, "Vatihi od milchama leplishtim et Yisrael." There was more wars between the Jewish people and the Philistines. And David went down with his servants. Vayilchamu et plishtim vaya'af David. And David became exhausted. The last words in verse 15. He became weak or exhausted, or he fainted. Which means he had fallen behind, and now he's in danger, in mortal danger, in the middle of this war. Ve'yishbi benov asher bilidei harafa, and it now tells us about this giant named Yishbi Benov, who is one of the giants. Bilidei harafa, the simple meaning is a giant, and it tells us the weight of the handle of his spear was 300 copper, 300 I guess shekel copper. I don't know how much that amounts to. I'd be interested to see. Just the handle of his spear. Am I reading this right? The weight of his spear was 300 copper weights. Yeah, I wonder what that is. You're looking it up, Mr. Fox? That's it. Vayomer lakota David. So he finds a weak and fainting David. Here comes this giant with a gigantic spear, and he's about to kill David. And it says, well, first we have to hear the survey. How much does this thing weigh? Usually ArtScroll comes through. I don't see it here. No. Okay. I'll forge forth in the meantime. If you have any updates, I'm listening. So he's about to be struck down by this giant. Vayazor lo Avishai ben Tzruya. And suddenly Avishai, the army general, his nephew, helps him. And he strikes the Plishti and kills him. And then after that close call, nishbeu anshe David lo lemor lo tetzei od itanu milchama. Don't go out to war with us anymore. V'lo techabet ner Yisrael, so that we should not extinguish the candle of Israel. They referred to David as Ner Yisrael, the candle of Israel. They said, that was a close call, David. We don't want you going out to war with us anymore. We much more prefer that you're alive and safe than out battling with us and risk dying. So this is fascinating. The Gemara in Sanhedrin has some interesting things here. It says that he was helped by Avishai ben Sruya. He helped him. So the one opinion of the Gemara says Avishai ben Sruya was not even physically present. He was off with Yoav fighting a war somewhere else at the time. And David had fallen behind. So how could Avishai help him? He wasn't physically there. He helped him with prayer. He had gotten like this alert, and he davened, and that tefillah enabled David to overcome the Plishti. Another opinion says that you're right, he wasn't physically there, and Hashem made a miracle that he was able to quickly and miraculously come back and save David. Kafta lefanav haaretz ki lo haya Hashem b'tayim David. How did he find out that David was in danger? You got to plug this one in. This is fascinating. A dove, flew by Avishai flapping her wings, and that signaled to Avishai that David was in trouble. There was a dove that flew by as a signal to alert Avishai to the danger of David, and he ran back to help David and saved his life. Yeah. Did somebody say something?
I think the Gemara suggests another possible way that he knew that there was a problem.
Yeah.
It was Friday, right? It was shortly before Shabbos, and he was washing his hair, and he saw blood in the water.
Oh,
and
wow.
he said, that blood isn't coming from me. There's got to be this blood. And from this, the Gemara learns the mitzvah of washing your hair before Shabbos.
Beautiful. I was not aware. Excellent.
I heard it from my father when he was giving a shir on Parat Chelek.
Yeah, that's in Sanhedrin Sadi Hay. So their doc is quoting. He doesn't bring that part down. Very nice. Thank you. Excellent. Okay. So he comes and he helps him. Now, I told you that the simple meaning is that Yilidei Rafa means the giants. However, the Gemara in Sota says that Harafa is very similar to the word Orpa. If you exchange the Hey and the Ayin, it would be Orpa. You remember who Orpa was? Orpa, yeah, the co-wife, what do you call it? I guess a sister-in-law of Rus, the mother of Goliath.
Oh,
Yes. Not only Goliath, but she had 4 sons who were gigantic, huge, monstrous, bad people, but very physically big, and physically big. And this was one of her sons.
oh.
So David had killed Goliath, and he now had actually almost died at the hands of another son, whose name was Yishbi Benov. Yeah. And so that's midrashically. Why is she called Harafa with a Hey? This is a bit graphic, but Harafa can also, it relates to the word threshing, like a threshing floor. And it says that after Orpah separated from Naomi and Rus, when she decided to not convert, that night she fell to such a low spiritual level after she had separated herself that she allowed herself she laid with 100 men and a dog. She made herself like a threshing floor. And it was the product of that union, or of those unions, that she got some of these kids. Yeah, a midrashic thing, trying to show the spiritual low that she had fallen to. And so she made herself like a threshing floor. That's why she's referred to as Harafa. Okay. Now, okay, that's war number 1. There's more to say here. I don't want to get bogged down in too many of the interesting midrashim. The next war, I don't have much to say about, except that there's a debate about where the Rashi belongs on it. It says, Vahi acharech in verse number 18, and it was after this, Vati oda milchama begov im Plishtim, in the city of Gov, there's another war with the Plishtim. Azika sibchai hachushati et saf asher bilidei harafa. Then this man named Sibchai struck Saf, who was a giant. Again, one of the children of Harafa, another son of Orpah. It's interesting how you're finding David's if these are indeed right, according to this midrash, David's armies are wiping out each one of her sons. It's just so interesting. And Rus, right? David is a descendant of Rus, and these 4 are the descendants of Orpah. That separation is now causing these battles, and you see Rus's descendants winning. Now there's a Rashi here in verse 18, just for for the people who are into these things. Kvar kadmazu lekulan v'lo kan el etzref mitat arba b'nei orpa. Rashi says this war already happened, and the only reason it's written here is to combine all the 4 wars of the sons of Orpah. There's a debate about whether this Rashi actually belongs here. And we have a couple of times throughout Tanakh where people blame the printer for putting Rashi in the wrong place. And the Rashi is not supposed to be on verse 18, it's supposed to be on verse 19. And so Rashi says, this war already happened. We've never heard of it. Why would Rashi know that it already happened? The Tanakh doesn't talk about it anywhere else. How did Rashi know that? He must be printed in the wrong place, and it's going on verse number 19. So let's see verse number 19. There's another milchama, v'tiyoda milchama. This is number 3, I think, if we're counting right. V'tiyoda milchama begovim plishtim, in the same city. Vayach Elchanan ben Yaarei Orgim Beit Halachmi et Goliath Hagiti. And there's the famous battle between Elchanan and Goliath. Yeah, you know that one? The famous showdown between Goliath and Elchanan. What's this? Somebody named Elchanan killed Goliath? Hagiti? What could this be referring to? So there's 2 ways out of this. If this is referring to our Goliath, right, the one we know, he was killed by David, not a man named Elchanan. So one option is, the Radak says cleverly, et Goliath Hagiti. The word et can sometimes, ace, yeah, in Ashkenaz, this can sometimes mean with. The one who was with Goliath was killed, referring to Goliath's brother. It actually doesn't say his name here. The brother of Goliath was killed by Elchanan. So it's a different battle. The guy was related to Goliath. The other option is to say that this is the actual Goliath that was killed in this battle. And who's Elchanan? None other than David. And another name for David was Elchanan. And the word is actually a contraction between 2 words. El, Hashem, Chanan, graced him. Hashem graced David with divine favor. And you recall the story, the showdown between David and Goliath had to do with tremendous chen, the grace of David. He took 5 stones, each one corresponded to one of the avos and to Hashem, and he throws a stone, and by some miracle, it's able to pierce through the armor or to go into the one place that Goliath wasn't armed. So the whole story is just one of David's grace in the eyes of Hashem. So in this context, you could refer to David as Elchanan. And his father was Ben Yaarei Orgim. That must be Yishai. So why is he called Yaarei Orgim? The word means forest weaver. Forest refers to the temple. Weaver means he wove curtains for the temple. In those days, there was no Beit HaMikdash, there's no temple. There was a Mishkan. In several areas of the Mishkan, they had curtains. And Yishai, the father of David, the great leader of the Jewish people, one of the things he did is he would weave curtains for the Mishkan. So Elchanan, the son of the curtain weaver. It's just fascinating. Now, why would you refer to Yishai by his nickname, curtain weaver, in this context? You can call him this anytime in Tanakh. So you have to make it so obscure that we have to go digging to figure out who killed whom over here. It would seem to be that this also has to do with the fight with Goliath. What gave Elchanan such grace? What gave David such grace that he should be so favored by God? It started with the father. The simple dedication. When he saw that something needed to be done for the Mishkan, he did it. He wove down to weaving curtains. And that's not, your fingers get sore, no fanfare, you don't get any plaque with your name on it. He wove curtains for the Mishkan because he cared for the honor of Hashem. And if somebody cares for the honor of Hashem, Hashem will take care of them. And his descendant was Elchanan, David, who was able to strike Goliath through the favor he found in Hashem's eyes. Right? I mean, in other words, anytime Chazal make a drasha to tell you some deeper meaning in the text, in this case, identifying the individuals, you have to wonder, why is it couched in the mysterious terms that the verse does it in this place? So it would seem to be that these are the things that brought out the merit of Yishai. Okay, finally, verse number 20. Vatihi od milchama begat. There was another war in Gat. You remember Gat? That was one of the cities of the Plishtims where David actually took refuge for a while. Vahi ish madon. Ish madon. There's a man. Rashi says Gvar de Mashchan. I think it means like an elevated person. The Art Scroll translates as a man of huge dimensions, a huge person. Ve'etzbaot yadav ve'etzbaot reglav sheish v'sheish, 24 mispar. And he had 6 fingers on his hands and 6 fingers on his legs, on his feet, 24 in all. V'gam hu yulad harafa, and he was also born to Harafa, which means he was also a giant, and or he was also the son of Orpah. So you have this huge person with 24 fingers. This is just an interesting point. Why if the verse tells you that he has 6 fingers on his hands and 6 on his feet, obviously he has 24 altogether. Yeah, we can add 6 plus 6 plus another 6 and 6 is 24. So why does the verse have to specify that it was 24? So one reason is just to clarify how you should read it. Don't say that he had 6 fingers in total on his hands and 6 fingers in total on his feet. It was 6 on each. And if I just would have said he had 24 fingers, I wouldn't know that they were evenly divided. Maybe he had 7 in one and 5 in the other. From here we know that it was 6 and 6 and 6 and 6 on the hands and feet, and which is 24 in all. Fascinatingly, Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky says that from here we learn a halachic thing. There's a section in the Torah, a slave owner, if somebody owns a non-Jewish slave, Eved Knani, the halacha is if the master injures his slave such that he cuts off a limb, or he loses his tooth or an eye, as the verse puts it, then that slave goes free with the loss of that limb. That's a section of the Torah. And the Gemara tries to figure out what kinds of injuries qualify to free the slave. If he just gets a bruise, if you cut off some of his flesh, that's not going to set him free. You might have to pay damages, etc. But it's not going to set him free. So if he just has like a growth on his hand, and you cut off that growth, that's not going to set him free. So the Gemara talks about a slave that has 6 fingers. He has an extra finger, and you cut it off. Does he go free? On the one hand, you could argue it's a limb. On the other hand, you could say, no, it's just a growth. It's not normal to have 6 fingers, so he shouldn't go free. It's just like a weird aberration. He's got this lump on his hand. It looks like a finger, but there's no such thing as a 6-fingered person. So this is not an official limb, and he should not go free. The Gemara rules that the 6th finger, it qualifies as a limb, and he goes free. Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky says, how do they know? It's from this verse in Tanakh. The prophet is treating these 6 fingers as 6 fingers, and it's clearly describing them and calling them fingers, and they qualify as actual limbs rather than just extra appendages. Fascinating, a halachic point from this nuanced little thingy here. Okay.
In this same verse, the book, the Art Scroll book that I have said he was born to the giant.
Oh, interesting.
Which means he's like the son of one of the giants.
Very good. Which his father probably, right? His father was a giant.
Yeah.
One of the children of the giant. You're right. That the Radak says the simple meaning of the word Harafa is a giant. I think I was misspeaking. I thought that he is a giant. No, he was born to a giant. Very good. So either Harafa is referring to his father who was a giant, or according to the Midrash, is referring to his mother whose name was Orpah, if you switch the letter Hey and I. Yeah.
But was Orpah a giant?
No, but her husband probably was. Or yeah, the father was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the final verses here in the chapter. So this brother of Goliath, by Cherefet Israel, he had a very similar style. He cursed the Jewish people. And who killed him? Just like Goliath, he would come out and curse Hashem every morning and evening. And he was struck down by Yakehu Yehonatan ben Shim'a Achi David, the brother of David. His name was also Jonathan, Yehonatan ben Shim'a Achi David. Excuse me, it wasn't the brother of David. His father was the brother of David. So this would be the nephew of David. Jonathan, the son of David's brother Shim'a. Yes, it shows you there was a good family, the children of Yishai, and they merited to strike, again, another descendant of Rus struck down the giant. It's very poetic, right? The descendants of this one should strike down the descendants of the one who decided to leave. Et Arba'at Eilet, finally the chapter ends off. These 4 Yuldu laharafa begat were born to the giant in Gat. Vayplu beyad David uveyad Avdav, and they fell to the hands of David and to the hands of his servants. So if you interpret that Goliath is literally Goliath and Elchanan is David, so it means that he fell in the hands of David and the hands of his servants, meaning because everyone's a servant of David since he's the king. Alternatively, if you say that we never spoke about the battle of David and Goliath, so David didn't kill any of these people, but since he was the king, it's like in the hands of David. So you could say that anyway. Okay, that is all for now. It's a pleasure learning with you all, and God willing, next time we'll talk about the Song of David. Very beautiful and meaningful, and always relevant. And so next week we're off, God willing. You should have a Chag Kasher v'Sameach. You should have successful Sedarim, and happy Chag. And God willing, we'll be learning together on Passover Bli Neder, but I'll confirm next week. All right. All the best.
All the best.